Today, I had the opportunity to interview Scott Hall, who is one of the first mentors I've ever had when it comes to syntropic ag. And I've been following his work closely for 3 years now. I've even volunteered on his farm for a week. So I'm very excited to conduct this. If you watch this full interview, you'll be able to find nuggets that you'll find nowhere else when it comes to syntropic ag and regeneration in general. So let's jump into this interview. For a brief introduction, Scott has been practicing syntropic agroforestry for about 10 years now. He's a fifth generation farmer. A few years ago, he launched Gabala Farm, one of the first syntropic farms in Australia, where he's done the groundwork for such practice and proven that it works. Now Scott has a newer, bigger syntropic farm close to Gold Coast, where he focuses on growing bananas and taro for the Asian markets. And he's got a platform on Mighty Networks called The Pathway to Regeneration, where he shares principles and foundations about syntropic ag, as well as progress on his farm, amongst other things, and Q&As, and it's a great community there. I'm part of it. And truly, I view Scott as truly a pioneer of the syntropic space, as he's into really lowering the cost drastically on his farm and showing that it works in that way. Because most syntropic ag systems are super expensive to put in place. Scott finds a way to reduce that. And as well as farming is truly about lowering inputs from the outside, as much as sometimes only using the plants to prepare the soil. And he can source for other projects for the people there to become the experts themselves rather than depending on him on the long term, which is quite a different type of consultancy compared to other people in the space. And a year and a half ago, I went to volunteer on his farm for a week. I truly noticed the efficiency of his farming, like how fast he was at pruning. There was no second guessing, no fiddling, while he was being deeply in tune with the system. And he understood very well what to do and when to do it, even when the unexpected came along. So I've learned many lessons there on his farm. Today we can explore a bit of these. And yes, Scott, is there anything you'd like to share before we get started?
No, thanks for the intro. No, that's all right. Let's go. Happy to chat.
Hey, good. Well, I'm just wondering, like, what really initially like drew you to the syntropic agroforestry, and why is you so motivated to continue with this method over like other methods?
Yeah, no, great question. Well, objectively speaking, putting aside brands, preferences, camps, tribes, etc., it's the most effective form of regenerative agroforestry, regenerative agriculture I've come across. And I've been practicing agroforestry for easy 20 years. Analog agroforestry, I came from the permaculture food forest school. I helped plant some of the early food forests with some of the most famous food forest people in the world. I've been around the traps a bit. And of course, I come from a farming background and I come from a professional services background in agriculture, especially contract pruning and stuff like that. But I've been looking through my own work for the answer. I knew the answer was there, and I was working on trying to find that answer, to try to find the source code, so to speak, for how to manage the ecosystem. And then when I come across syntropic agriculture, I saw it and I immediately knew that was it. Immediately, instinctively, I knew. And as soon as I knew that, I did everything I could to find out everything I could about it because I was highly invested in agroforestry. I was 100% committed and professionally devoted to agroforestry. So it was in my interest in all levels to find out about it as much as I could. So I did. And then when I did, I realized that yes, it was true. That was the answer. It's a specific and precise way of managing plants through species succession. Subjective interpretation, there's no room for that. As with other types of agroforestry, there is. For example, your food forest may be correct according to whatever we define a food forest as, and that again is fluid and vague. When my food forest can be also correct according to however we want to define a food forest, yet both our food forests can be completely different and be qualitatively different too. So, of course, with syntropy, there is a specific function And we follow that and we can observe that. And the more experienced we are with syntropy and using this type of agroforestry, the more we can recognize it in other people's work too. So if we know enough about it, and if I come from some one climate and I've been working in that climate and I have no exposure to another climate, let's say, I can go to another climate which is completely different to the one I'm used to working in. And I can start recognizing the patterns straight away, especially with just a little bit of a chat. We can start picking up the underlying function and structure. So it's a very specific and precise form of agroforestry. And with that, the results speak for themselves. When you get the hang of it and get it right, it is very, very powerful and productive. Yeah. So yeah, that's once I saw it, that was it.
Yeah,
No
right.
looking.
It's the systematic approach, I guess, as well, that made you more drawn to it than, let's say, the food forest kind of permaculture style, right?
Yeah, I mean, I needed to see, just the fact that it had a clear framework
Yeah,
that responded and spoke to ecological succession.
yeah,
Um, and that's a clear framework, not just mentioning that ecological succession is a part of a food forest, which is all I'd heard up until I was like, okay, we get that the ecological succession is part of it. Great. That was all we sort of had up until there's more to it than that, but at the end of the day, it's specific and it's precise, and we've got guidelines to measure the process.
yeah.
We've been given those guidelines, so we can use them to determine whether we're doing it the right way, the wrong way. We can monitor and feed back in daily.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. It's like it's this mix between regeneration and also utilizing the actual lines of monoculture and all that and the spacings and all that rather than you know doing a random spacing, which can happen quite a lot on food forests, or like making it so dense in a way that it becomes so chaotic. I find that really with Syntropic, it's like really Syntropic ag is about combining the efficiency of monoculture and the fastest regeneration possible as well. And yeah, there's just something about it that doesn't come close to any other frameworks that I found in permaculture for the planting, at least.
No, no, it's not but look, on saying that with the patterns, you don't have to have
Yeah,
straight lines in
yeah,
Syntropy. You can have any shape you like.
exactly. Yeah, true.
It's all your management and planting that counts.
Yeah,
You can have spirals and wavy stuff and
yeah,
islands. I
agree.
do a lot of work with mosaic style with the islands and that into the interventionary agroforestry type of stuff. But of course, straight lines are a very efficient way of managing. You don't sacrifice diversity at all,
Yeah.
and you have maximum edge effect because you've got an edge up against so you've got savanna and woodland edge repeatedly every 5 meters.
Yeah,
It's an
definitely. I mean, it's for the
intense
I meant
relationship.
the lines for the bigger systems, right? Because yeah, of course you could do nests, you could do sparrow.
Yeah,
We've done that too, but in reality,
yeah,
like, to make it really work on a large scale, on a bigger scale than a few than 1 hectare or so, I think the lines are what people opt to
yeah,
do all the time anyway.
yeah, exactly right. For your, the working in nests and whatnot is really good for regeneration, and it's really good for forage style food forestry.
Yeah,
You know, it's really, that like if you've got a 10-acre block of senescent eucalypt, which a lot of people do in Australia with bad soil, etc. Um, to go around and hit senescent trees with a chainsaw and plant a nest, a consortium in the nest, as just in a mosaic pattern throughout and regenerate and bring coolness in
yeah,
through species succession and high succession trees and along with food, which are
yeah,
cooling down and reducing the fire risk. You have yourself a nice 10 acres of forage, where you can go out and pick your lemons and your oranges and your figs and all of that at the same time have very big shady trees start to grow ultimately. So, yeah, it just depends on your context, I suppose.
yeah. True, true. Wow. I'm gonna go on to the second question.
Yeah.
So, how has your understanding of like soil regeneration, has it evolved over the last 10 years since you started with that practice? How was your like paradigm then and now? How different is that?
It's funny. It's a great question. At the beginning, I was all about, just that standard permaculture, early term per days permaculture. Maybe permaculture's changed its viewpoint. Generally speaking, I know permaculture is a very diverse space. So, from my experience where I was in permaculture about 20 years ago, our basic principles and concepts were, soil carbon and fertility is given to the soil through mulch, chop and drop. So, that was all good and well. Sure, it does. And it's a good way to build soil, and it's a very important way to build soil. But then I came across, this is before Syntropy, this is probably about 15 years ago, I come across Christine Jones and Dr. Christine Jones. And I started to learn about root exudates and the liquid carbon pathways through the exchanges of sugars and microbes, and how those um, generation of sugars in the carbohydrates in the plants and were given to microbes in exchange for nutrients, say nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, etc., fungal and bacterial relationships. And I understood that carbon got very, very deep into the soil through those relationships. And that was an eye opener for me. And I'm like, okay, great. And that has to some extent been spoken about in the past in permaculture, but not the same way. It's more about it when you chop it, the roots let go and die,
Yeah.
rather than the actual sugar pathways moving kilometers
Mhm.
through the fungal networks. And so that was great, and that was interesting. And then that went into that mixed species cover crop stuff. And that's where they were really getting into that carbon and cover cropping. And then, of course, then with the agroforestry, once I sort of started to understand the whole, I realized that agroforestry was just a massive cover crop, mixed species, like it makes cowpea, sorghum, and corn and buckwheat and that sunflower mix, that sort of stuff. It's just, that's low succession mixed species cover crop. But if you let it go through species succession, you get a cover crop that's just an absolute monster with all kinds of levels of diversity. And that's when that's that my understanding of soil regeneration is through that diversity and it really needs to go through species succession to really start dumping carbon. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but in 3 years we managed to. I've got the numbers here. If I think I've got them handy. If I can look them up, if you don't mind.
Great.
Let's have a look. Uh, so in 3 years, here we go. Okay. In 3 years, we got, after 3 years of planting and managing, this is without inputs. This was just planting and managing. We got an effective cation exchange capacity. We increased it by 61%. Total carbon, including life, we increased it by over 200%. The nitrogen, we increased it by 1,275%, so it's 12 times more.
Insane.
The phosphorus, we increased 471%, and the potassium, we increased 314%. So that's through 3 years, and it's just like, okay, this root exudate stuff is like hardcore, but watch out when you add it species succession, and then you just keep moving into more and more and more powerful plants. And that came back through to me from a lot of the Brazilians I worked with in the early days too, where they were saying things like very important things, which was, the carbon pathways with plants are very important, liquid carbon, and particularly cassava. A lot of the
Mhm.
cassava is in the tropics and subtropics. The cassava is a very important plant, not just for food. I grow cassava. It's been probably 5 or 6 years since I've ever pulled a cassava plant up for food. And yet I've got thousands of them because of the amount of carbon they dump in the ground that's stored in those tubers. That's sugar. And they share that with the soil microbes after you cut it.
So basically, yeah, just the tubers in the soil that, especially if you're not harvesting, they're also gonna like rot down, and it's quite a lot of kilos in there of
Yeah, they rot down, but what they do is they're a sugar store which
yeah,
gets shared through their roots. They stay most of the time they stay whole, and they are a reserve that
yeah.
that reserve then gets shared out. The
Hmm.
sugars in those tubers will be shared out to the microbes and travel a very long way and shared throughout the macroorganism.
Mm.
And then the plant will recover because the tubers share out all of that sugar, and in return, nitrogen is supplied and all of the other important uh, nutrients and trace elements for that plant to start recovering.
Yeah, well, it's actually quite, it sounds quite insane to hear these numbers, huh? Like the nitrogen, like
It's
by
true
12
too.
times.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
is that on the farm you have now, or was that on Gabala farm?
No,
Mm.
that's on the farm I've got now.
Wow. Well, this is a system without any amendments at first. There was none.
None at the first, and we still continue without amendments in our tree rows, in our agroforestry lines, but at our inter-row crops, we use compost to
Yeah.
amend and inoculate because we're growing taro, and taro is a higher succession crop.
Yeah.
We haven't built the macroorganism because it's only a new farm. We're building a macroorganism. It hasn't been built right up to the point which matches taro. So we've had to add some complexity in the soil and microbiology through compost to help support the taro. But and we're starting on poor soil.
Yeah.
And taro likes things a bit better, but we need to. We're commercially oriented. We're not just wanting to go out and make money out of farming. We want to have a livelihood from farming. But what we want to do, of course, is to share the fact that we can all do it. We
Yeah.
want to know that we can fill up while this system still exists. We want to know we would like to be able to pay the rent and fill our tank up with fuel with money that we earn from agroforestry rather than flipping burgers for the clown.
Yeah, so it makes me come up with a question because actually I saw a lot of topsoil being created, especially actually I saw a Mediterranean system. I was 6 year old at Terra Syntropica in Portugal, and I saw the amount of topsoil that was created. It's like this amount, in 6 years.
Yeah,
It was insane,
yeah,
but obviously
yeah.
you see that only in the tree line. So if you look a
Yes.
little bit further away, you wouldn't find that. So I don't know if it's a matter of climate or if it's possible in the long term to have like, let's say your taro rows, let's say you put up your tree line and let's say you let the system pump for like 15, 20 years. Do you
Mm.
expect to see that topsoil in the interrows really being created? Because for us in the Mediterranean, I think it's going to take way longer for the topsoil to be created in the interrows. So I'm just wondering if
Okay.
you've seen that before happen, or like how much time do you think it would take? Like, do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, okay. So good question. Well, there's two things. There's more than one thing here. First up, we have grasses in our alleys,
Yeah,
and because we use a method called that I've developed since I've started this new farm called Successional Accumulation, we don't need to use the grass rows on the grass on the tree rows. We don't need to mulch onto the tree rows. The tree rows are feeding themselves.
yeah,
So we don't need it. So what we're doing is we are using the grass to feed the taro. So that's helping to build the soil. But the taro is also growing in its own consortium with trees. So we're pruning as well. We're managing into those tree rows. Sorry, taro rows, those inter rows too, with species. We're using species succession as well. So that'll develop its own fertility.
Yeah.
Taro's medium strata, so we've got an over story on it.
Yeah. Now I see what you mean, but what I meant to ask is like, let's say you don't have this interrow, and let's say you want to create your interrow of taro like later down the line, let's say, and then you
Yeah.
reset on your trees. And well, I mean, yeah, definitely you got the grass, so that definitely will help out as well if you want to just put it into that interrow there. But have you seen the impact of tree lines, like really, let's say the topsoil being created in between the tree lines? Have you seen that happen before?
Right. So you're just talking about the alleys in
Yeah,
particular rather than
yeah,
the interrows. So
yeah,
sorry to
outside
get
the
you
tree rows,
on
yeah,
the alley itself.
yeah,
Look, in a Mediterranean environment or a brittle environment, the answer for that is animals.
yeah,
Using Alan Savory's tool of animal impact. There's no two ways about it. It's a savanna ecosystem, and it relies on that predator-prey relationship, that the keystone species of a brittle ecosystem. There's
yeah,
no two ways about it. They have to marry,
yeah,
kick the
definitely.
can kick the can down the road as long as you want. But at the end of the day, if you really want those results, commitment to that is what we're after. Otherwise, you can improve it with inputs. You can go out and buy compost and organic fertilizer and irrigate it and cover crop it, but you'll never get up there like the way the animals and the plant, the relationship with grass and animals and the movement pattern of animals. It's just how the savannas operate, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Actually, we're starting to have animals now in rotational grazing. We're going to get 25 sheep with
Mm.
electric fencing. And we got some experts on that, actually. We got a big farm that is like an hour away. I think they got around 150 cows.
Oh yeah.
And they're doing the like rotational grazing on like 400 hectares or something like that. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, so it drew quite a lot of experts towards that place, and now we're getting two experts that are coming and showing us the entire thing. So definitely, it's the idea in the olive grove that we have at least to start using rotational grazing, and yeah, between us and
I'd
Syntropic
like to
as
just say
well.
that rotational grazing is a different thing to
Yeah,
time grazing and holistic grazing. They
yeah.
are two different things.
I
So
meant
one
it
or
is
the other.
holistic grazing. It is holistic
Okay,
grazing.
yeah,
There's
righto.
and
Because
savory. I just it
if you
just
can
works,
move
you know?
cows around with an electric fence all you want
Yeah,
and rotate them as much as you want, but if you don't have your grazing plan and the recovery
yeah.
and disturbance and recovery cycles planned in, you just might as well just let them wander around in the paddock.
Yeah, it was just a matter of wrong wording, but it is definitely
Yeah, it's pretty, yeah, because in my business, I talk to a lot of farmers and I have to actually say, well, which one are you doing?
yeah, yeah.
If you're doing rotational grazing, you pretty much, where's your grazing plan? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so I'm wondering on your journey there with Syntropic Ag, what are the biggest challenges you've encountered on your way, like, and what kind of lessons did you get out of that?
Yeah, great question, man. Um, I started, and I see this a lot, and we all suffer this, and we all start this way. We start too technical,
Mm,
getting all wrapped up in the consortium and life cycle and strata and putting a design together and making spreadsheets and just placing plants and what we're doing is at the end of the day we're front running succession and what nature would do by anticipating it, and quite often doesn't work out that way, and what we think will work quite often doesn't. And it's made me come up with a joke actually, which is, how do you make nature laugh? Show her your Excel spreadsheet. Because it's true, and there's a lot of investment and energy caught up in making these spreadsheets and then planting them. You get a spreadsheet and a plant list, and you want to execute the job, and you have to go out and plant, buy all those plants, nursery those plants, collect all those seeds, get the labor in to plant them. The cost per meter is astronomical. And then what happens is, because it's a contrived anticipation of what we think nature will want to do. We'll go, what plants are best for this? What's the life cycle of this? What's the strata here? And then people will say this, and this. And we'll put them all together, and nature goes, yeah, well, nobody asked me. Some of it's right, but some of it's wrong. And nature what happens is it becomes unbalanced. And nature will then go to rebalance it. And then when she rebalances it, you'll get deaths, you'll get gaps. Gaps are a killer in syntropic farming and agroforestry. Openings and gaps are an absolute killer because you'll get light coming back down onto the ground and you'll get weeds. You're not harnessing the energy with your plants. Or if you don't get weeds, if you're in a particularly dry climate, you'll get desertification. You'll get openings and bare soil. And you'll get, and that's not syntropy, that's entropy. So that was my biggest insight and learning from the start, was just being far too technically minded and trying to work around the consortium too much and planting consortiums and getting too involved in the life cycle strata, et cetera, et cetera. And what I missed was the most and more powerful elements in agroforestry, which are the cycles and successional cycles and the patterns and the way they express through time. And particularly when it comes to species density and species diversity. Massive change. And that's why I ended up developing the successional accumulation method, which includes the startup of infestation. So at the end of the day, it turns out it's very simple. It's actually quite easy. And you don't need to know all of that technical information at the beginning. You need to understand how successional patterns work. And I've identified 3 successional patterns that complete the whole successional stages from placenta 1 right up to primary. And you just work through the 3 stages of that and use the patterns. And then what happens is all of the technical information regarding strata, life cycle, and consortium and all of that stuff falls into place along the way. And that's how nature works. She works in these waves and cycles more than she works in the way the organization of plants goes. And if we then approach our work the same way nature works, it becomes ridiculously easy. And we've found the work now to be so simple. It's embarrassing. And that's where we're at. It's absolutely true. And when I teach people and when I sometimes consult, I don't often consult. I'd rather teach. But when I teach people, the hardest part in teaching is getting us to unlearn our attachment to wanting to know everything before we start, which we will never do, and also needing to feel that we have it understood technically and completely before we begin, rather than just stepping into it with just being comfortable with the knowledge of what we have to do to start off is all we actually need to do. And if we can start off the right way and forget about all of the future too much, because I can tell you what you think's going to happen in the future ain't going to be what's going to happen there. And what you know now is completely different to what you're going to know in 1 year or 2 years or 3 or more. So when the time comes to worry about what happens in the future, do that at that time in the future and trust who you will be then, because you will know a lot more. So forget trying to pile on all of that information about what's going to happen in the future. People are always asking me, isn't that going to be too big by then? Don't you put the trees is a tree every 2 meters too close? Isn't this going to happen? Isn't that going to happen? Let it go. Forget about all of that stuff, because that's a massive energy. It ties you up energetically. It ties up your mind space and head space, and it creates anxiety. It's completely unnecessary. It does nothing except all it does is slow you down in the present. And that's what I suffered and went through and found it to be so goddamn easy in the end. And now the biggest challenge now is teaching people how to just let go and trust the steps and follow it through. And then you will understand consortium, life cycle strata, etc. Most, from experience, insight, and understanding in ways that can never be explained to you by anybody else. For example, a lot of this consortium is pruned into place and managed into place. A consortium is never constant, and we will always have that static bias to designing a consortium because we're on a spreadsheet. For example, strata is managed a lot of the time through pruning. Strata of a plant doesn't change when you prune it. It does when it flowers, but that's a different story, and I'm not going to bring that in right now. But when you're pruning a consortium, you're re-establishing light balance through where you make your cuts. And then therefore your stratification, your medium, your emergent and everything coupled together the right way, depending on whereabouts and how you cut and how many cuts you make and the size of the cuts. And there's your stratification. Suddenly it went you walk in there, it's over positioned. There's shade here, shade there, shade there. You can say, yeah, sure, the consortium's not right. It's not perfectly balanced with light. It will never be perfectly balanced with light because it's not static. But at the same time, the plants aren't suffering. They can overposition right up and suffer up to overposition for quite a significant period of time before they start to suffer. And we will always prune before they will suffer. But the overpositioning is a normal part of nature. And so we can work with that. We can let that overpositioning go and let it fluff right up and get a wall of plants. And if everything's happy and healthy, as a matter of fact, I've just uploaded a YouTube video. It's a 6-minute YouTube video where I actually show that. I don't go into it so technically like I am with you now, but you'll see an example of that.
Yeah, so
And yeah, you saw it, did you?
yeah, I just did right before this.
Okay, well, you see that wall of plants?
Yeah. A lot of
Everything was
decisions,
healthy, mate. There was
Yeah.
but there was over positioning.
Yeah.
And what we will do when we go back and prune, we'll prune everything according to its strata. We'll drop down the medium, we'll skirt and lift up the emergent and balance it all out. And it might look like the spreadsheet for about 6 weeks until it just fluffs back up and away it goes again through another surge, another growth pulse. And that's that successional wave and cycle. And if we work like that, it's so much simpler.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, it seems to me like I am very technically minded too, and I've fallen in that trap at the beginning as well. Just thinking I
Yeah.
need all the right plants, and if I don't have that plant, what do I do? And I just got to figure
We
out.
all will. We all do, mate.
Yeah, I think
But guess what
it's
else?
so easy to nerd out on the theory because you just like want to, learn. There's something, something addictive about learning as well that causes
Well,
that.
this is right. We love to nerd out.
Exactly. So
We
I think.
love to nerd out.
But now I realize that, yeah, I just cannot spend all my energy on this and Excel
No,
sheets and all that. I just find the powerhouse plants and use them, and
and then manage
then
them.
that's it. And then you manage. And I
Exactly.
find that it's so much more flow in it when you're
Oh,
not
you get
going through
success.
this.
You get
Yeah,
actual results. And listen, mate, there's one other thing with the nerding out and being too biased towards the technical stuff. What happens is you get a dominant chat, especially on the big Facebook groups.
yeah.
I'm an admin of one of them, one of the big Facebook groups. And if you got chat, which is um, about Syntropic Ag, all the nerding out, all the chat will be about consortium, life cycle strata, spreadsheets, people sharing designs and uploading this and that, and it's all technical. And what it does is it starts to bring in a bias towards supporting those people who have got more of a aptitude towards being technical and nerding out.
Hmm.
And it scares off a lot of the other people that have got a more hands-on, intuitive approach towards agroforestry. And it makes them think that they can't do it because they don't understand those spreadsheets and all the nerding out. And there's a massive bias in Syntropy towards the technical stuff. And a lot of people get spooked. A lot of people come to me and they say, look, I don't know all this sort of stuff, but I want to do it. And it's like, don't worry about all that stuff. Because guess what? 80% of those nerds can't manage agroforestry for shit, mate. They're no good at it. I've seen a lot of it, and they're just way too technical, and the system suffers massively. So it's so contrived. So I think we all have a bit of a duty to let that go
Yeah.
and try to be more successful in the field and understand these cycles and these successional waves and work with those and then open up to everybody else who feels excluded from that nerding out and say, hey, we were wrong. We nerded out too much and we made everything way too expensive, way too costly, and we alienated people and made people feel excluded. Whereas it's really actually a human thing. And like Ernst Gotsch says, we're part of an intelligent system. If we can bring that approach into Syntropy, we will be all more successful. But not only that, more of us will be successful. It'll increase the amount of people participating and succeeding, and we need that.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, the people that have the skills usually to grow crops, farmers, are like less educated usually, and they can't really understand this kind of language. Some of them, and then it's like, yeah, if
It
we,
only suits a certain type of personality, which is
yeah,
very exclusive.
exactly, it's true. It creates a sort of like elitism there, where only
Yes.
people that are technically minded can
And
thrive
the
in it,
irony
even though
is,
they don't thrive in it. Yeah,
those that are more and more technically gifted are probably the least capable of actually in the field applied hands-on agroforestry.
yeah, yeah,
You
exactly.
put them out in the field and give them a set of secateurs and a set of loppers, and they're only, an hour later, they've only gone 50 meters.
Yeah,
So then the skills on execution aren't there. And if you can get somebody started with the skills of execution first, they'll learn all the technical stuff along the way, but they'll be a much better agroforester. And that's how I'm teaching. That's what I do on my platform too, is I share examples all of the time, videos, and get into it, get started this way. Yeah.
yeah.
I
It's
think
about
this is where
making
we've
it.
really got to sort of say, hey,
Yeah,
let's just stop this nerding out for a minute, or let's just, we value it, we need it, but it's just got too much importance, and we've overvalued that side of it, and it's excluded a lot of people. All of us, I think, have a responsibility to sort of wind that down
yeah.
and, not hinge our egos off how smart we sound when we start talking about whose
Well,
audience.
actually, yeah, that makes me want to switch actually straight away to that question that I had about infestation, because this is so one of the approach that you, well, coined, let's say. So it's called infestation method, and
No, infestation is within the method called successional accumulation.
yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wanna, yeah, distinguish that, but
Yeah, it's
yeah,
succession. It's a part of the successional phases.
yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
so I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Exactly. Actually, it makes me think of this now, as you say, that people need to be better with execution. That this infestation actually is a way to get people into a very well, non-technically minded state where they're just like, okay, let's okay, you have one plant,
Yeah,
pigeon pea, you just prune it this way, and that's it. You just need 2 minutes to know, and then you see the regrowth and you understand that better. And yeah,
got
so I find that it makes a lot of sense. And for some people, they would qualify this. I've heard people say that they qualify this as a perennial cover cropping or something like that. Not true syntropy, but I find that it's really about the goal that comes after. And
Well, mate, it's only perennial cover cropping if you
yeah, if you don't do anything after,
don't use species succession. But of course, this is all
exactly.
based on species
But
succession.
yeah, and I find that it can be a bit like dumbed down of what I understand with this approach. That's what I've received like as
Yeah.
feedback from it. But I mean, I see clearly what you've done on your farm, and I see that it works. So for me, there's no doubt about that. And yeah, I'm just wondering. So, what made you switch to this like method over the all plant all at once method?
Well, look, let's just qualify what's going on first, right? So the infestation method it's not a method. It's within the successional accumulation method. So to call infestation a method on its own, we've taken it out of context.
Hmm.
And then we can say, okay, yes, it is a perennial cover crop. Because if you just do that, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's a stage within an approach of syntropy called successional accumulation. An infestation is the first successional wave, which is followed by what I call the stabilization period, which comes into early secondary succession, and then moves from the stabilization phase into the successional phase, which moves us towards primary forest. Now, all of now, if you to understand that it's not a perennial cover crop, it needs to be understood in context. So we keep it in that context. So what we're doing is we're starting, to use Ernst's language, we work from simple to complex. When we're in low succession, the ecosystem is simple. And when we have a simple low succession ecosystem, plants get covered in weeds. And we call that an infestation. So what we do is we take that pattern and we apply it as our first phase of species succession to start our systems. And what happens in a simple infestation in species succession, now you can see this everywhere you go. If you travel around the bush and look around, you see it everywhere. That's how nature starts. When there's disturbance or damage or something like that, it gets taken over by weeds, usually just one or two species. And it's but it's nature's medicine. It's the beginning. And so we can identify that as a phase and use that function. That's a phenomena that you can't deny exists. It happens. So we take that into our farm and we start simply with that, because it's because from what comes after the infestation, underneath that canopy, that's the first canopy that's developed by the infestation, is the first genesis of higher life. So that's why it's not a perennial cover crop, because underneath it, the next wave of life is coming. So the infestation is a type of placenta, the way Ernst talks. It covers the bare earth and the soil and creates protection, and underneath it comes the next phase of succession. So if we can mimic that on our ground, on our farms, and I've proven it, and I've done it, we are miles ahead we just massive energy flow. We've got all of that canopy. We create a littered understory straight away, and it's a nursery for the next stage of succession. And then from that, we move into what I call the stabilization phase, and this is all observable in nature. If we go out there and look at a infestation that's gone through a period of time and has cycled, what happens is you'll start to see young emergent trees poking up. And then that's what we're doing. So that's what I call the stabilization phase, because that's when you get more, it's moving into early secondary succession. So we've moved from placenta to placenta, sort of early secondary into later stages of early secondary succession by having a woody species come. Acacias sit in the infestation as far as just for the sake of definition. But we move into these woody species that come, and I call it the stabilization phase, because once those woody species establish, which are led by an infestation of plants, which pioneer the bare earth, the genesis, these woody species can't establish without their previous infestation. What happens is when they establish, I call it the stabilization phase, because the ecosystem stabilizes. Once you get those woody species in, you can't get rid of them. They don't die easily. They're there. You can only really come and poison them if you want to get rid of them. Once they start, they keep going. Eucalypt is a very good example of that. Your wild olive, your African olives and stuff like that, your privet, your ligustrum, your camphor laurel, all these species. So there's many more. But so we're moving from simple to complex. And as you start to move into that stabilization phase, we've got ourselves more stratification. Usually it's most often represented by medium and emergent. Because what happens is the birds come. And what happens once those early emergents get up, like eucalypts and casuarinas, etc., get up there, and there are still remnant acacias in different ecosystems. Acacias feature strongly throughout the world, particularly in Australia. You start to attract the birds, and the birds will roost, and they will drop the seeds, and the seed bank starts to build. And from their droppings comes a lot of medium strata species that start to establish underneath those emergents.
Mm-hmm.
And as that starts to work, the complexity increases. The soil cover starts to become thicker and thicker. The canopy develops, the litter starts to build. And if you start to dig the soil in those sort of ecosystems, you get around and get out in the bush and have a look, you start to see bugs running around under the leaves and that sort of stuff. It's increasing in quality and quantity. We're moving through species succession. We're moving into early to mid-secondary succession. And then we're going in towards what I call the successional phase, which is where we get a plethora of young seedling high succession trees that are brought by the birds. And I'm talking about nature here, not our farm. We're going to copy that pattern into our farm. That's why we've won. That's why we're winning now, because we're just copying that simple pattern that I'm expressing now into our farm. And it's what Ernst said, it's just a different way of applying syntropy using the patterns. And so we want to establish that sort of thing on our farm. But what happens is through that medium and emergent dominant stratification of early secondary succession, we start to get a low strata starts to develop. And that low strata are seedling high succession trees. When high succession trees are young, their strata is low. When species, as those high succession species grow, they move up through strata into high strata, and a lot of the time those high succession species end up full emergence once they're 100 years old or something like that, or 80 years old up to 200 years old. And that's the dynamic of stratification moving through species succession and the strata. So often our high strata and our low strata are actually higher succession trees coming through. But we do get high strata trees like our mango and camphor laurel, etc., as well. So it's very dynamic, but we can break down that complexity into the pattern. Start on our farm with an infestation, manage that infestation and help it develop the stabilization phase. And that stabilization phase will, because birds will come into your farm, and they have, and they do. Not only that, is we plant the seed bank into the stabilization phase. We don't really plant the seed bank into the infestation phase. We let it nurse the stabilization phase. And this is nature working for us. This is how she works. And Ernst has nailed it down into the principles, but this is an applied version of Ernst's principles using observations and patterns in nature. Moving to the stabilization phase, build our seed bank, and then once we're up into the stabilization phase, that successional phase just takes off on its own.
Yeah.
Just keep going into the seed bank and managing it. It just takes off on its own. We don't have to get too technical about that at all. It just happens. Now, most of our tree crops are sitting in the stabilization phase. For example, I'm coming through into stabilization now in a lot of my rows, bringing in banana, eucalypt, acacia, not acacia, there's some acacia, but Grevillea robusta, and citrus. And that's all part of the stabilization phase. So the infestation is just one part of that whole method that I just described then. It's a pattern and it's called successional accumulation. And I've just given that information to you in a nutshell, and that's how it works. I've simplified what is complex. So what we do is we transfer the complexity to nature. We let the ecosystem be complex, where we use the simplicity in the way that nature works in her elegance. We're not simplifying anything. We're simplifying our approach by giving the complexity to nature and letting her manifest the complexity. That's all. And it works. It really works.
Yeah. So then to clarify, so the infestation is not a method, but it's a step within the method.
Yes, exactly
The
right.
first step.
If you call
So
it a method on its own, indeed, there's no species succession added to it, and
yeah,
it is in perennial cover cropping, but we're not doing that.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, yeah, to include some of the infestation plants, usually I find that they're mostly high strata most of the time.
Yeah,
Like
high and
so to give a few examples here, I mean, for me here, I mean, actually based on what Scott has said here, I'm gonna plant a block of 10 meters by 8 meters of acacias. I'm using Acacia saligna. It's a species that I want to use because I've seen it on the roadsides, actually going
Mm.
down to the south of Spain towards Portugal. I've seen it for 15 kilometers non-stop, only
Yeah, mate,
acacias. So when you see this, it tells you this is the right species for that. And
100%.
in New Zealand, for example, I've seen the privet. Privet does that quite a lot. This is sort of nightshade that you have on your farm, like this wild one that grows on your neighbor's land. How is it called?
Wild tobacco.
Yeah, wild tobacco, for example, I've seen that too. And they seem to always be this sort of the high strata kind of plants. You use a pigeon pea, and yeah, I mean, definitely for me, since you've been talking about it, it makes so much more sense to reduce the costs. Because, for example, acacia, I could just propagate it in a greenhouse in a nursery for free, basically. Whereas
Well, it's much
with
more powerful.
all these fancy consortiums, like they
Mm.
cost a lot more money because some plants just can't propagate and all that. So
Oh, mate.
really, the amazing part of that is that using plants that you can propagate yourself. You do the pigeon pea by seed directly, for example, uh, and that just like makes sense. Like this is syntropy in the works as well. It's not just in nature. It's like rather than spending so much time, and in the end it's entropy being spending so much time on trying to find all the plants when you could just get 95% of the results out of just doing 10% of the work, for
That's how
example.
nature works.
Yeah,
She's the
that's how
powerhouse,
nature works.
not
Yeah,
us.
exactly.
She's
Exactly.
the one doing the work, not us. All we're doing is guiding, planting, and managing.
Yeah.
If you think about it, if you get a massive infestation of acacia and you go in there, and I've made a video about it on YouTube when I'm in an actual infestation of acacia, but if you go and I show the soil underneath it, but if you go into a massive infestation of acacia, prune it, drop everything to the ground so there's massive amounts of biomass and plant into it, you can't tell me you haven't got a good chance of growing trees in it. You
Yeah.
can't tell me that that soil is not much, much, much better than what it was before the acacia infestation. So all we're doing is employing that phenomenon on the farm to get us into higher life and just move it through species succession. Nature
Yeah.
knows what she's doing.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting because actually, like that's what some people overlook is that Ernst actually on his farm has used the infestation step at
Of course
first.
he does.
He has, but we never really
Yes.
hear about it because that's usually what teachers teach is the plant all at once method.
Well, let me
And
tell you something.
yeah, tell me.
I've spoken to a lot of people about Syntropic, and let me tell you something. What we know in the West, outside of Brazil, is what we think Syntropic is not. And this is what I've put together as a successional accumulation method is just a method of applying Syntropy that Ernst and Fernando and Enrique Souza have been doing a lot. It's just that we're being taught what happens is one type of course format escaped out of Brazil like a virus and it's gone all over the whole world. And this is what we think Syntropy is now.
Yeah.
So if I come along and talk about successional accumulation and the infestation and stuff, it sounds like heresy.
Yeah, it does.
One
This is
all
what I
people
heard.
have got, all they
Yeah.
have as a reference is this one monoculture course style.
Yeah.
And I know these teachers from Brazil. I
Mhm.
know these people from Brazil and I know what they know. And let me tell you that that course that's gotten out of Brazil and escaped like a virus and gone around the world, guess what? That course was developed to go in and teach the people in the cities in Brazil, the people from town who know nothing about farming, what syntropy is. It's one type of course to teach one type of profile of people.
Yeah.
And now we've taken it on as if that's what Ernst says that must be done. We have made that mental leap to look at this specific specimen of a course style, and then made the mental leap that this is what Ernst preaches. Ernst, like you said, Ernst has used infestations and all across the way.
Yeah.
Enrique Sosa has come to my farm and seen my infestations and said, perfect. There's nothing else growing them except one species, but he saw my strategy.
Yeah.
And he said, this is better than most farms in Brazil. But if I show a lot of people who have learned syntropy outside of that type of method or way of learning, and they've only been exposed to that single type of course format, they think that I'm wrong. They think that that's because they've only got that as a reference, you see. And I'm really, really wanting, that's what I'm trying to do, is break that. Because if we keep referring to that single type of course format as a reference to what syntropy is, we're wrong. And most of us are wrong. 80% of the people around the world who know syntropy or understand syntropy mostly only have that type of course format
Yeah.
to refer to as syntropy. And then that's why we're having so much trouble, because we're nerding out, getting spreadsheet-based, consortium, strata, life cycle, and we're crashing it. We're not using method and application, which is what Ernst, Enrique, et cetera, use. Fernando, they use method and application, which is that's why I structured together the successional accumulation, because what it is, I've just organized what they do, what I do, into a method that I can share. That's all I've done.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
It's
that's
not
the thing.
original
I
work.
see so many people that just don't want to get involved with Syntropy because it sounds too complicated. And that's actually most people, actually. I
Exactly
mean,
right.
people that
We
would
need to
actually get
include them.
involved, they would actually get involved if it was simple.
100%, man.
But then
We're
no,
going
they
to
don't
make
do
a bit
it
of
because
space for
it
them. We're
sounds
going to
like it
push the
requires
nerds
too
back.
much knowledge. It requires too much knowledge. That's what they think,
100%.
and it
100%.
doesn't.
It's so simple.
And yeah, so it's a bit sad to see this because yeah, I mean it's
Well, we have to change that, Milan. We have to change that. We have to start
make it simpler.
stepping back, pushing the nerds back out of the way
Yeah,
and those techno gurus, and making some space for everybody, because it is for everybody and it's actually a lot easier. And it's our responsibility, as I think, as people that are already well into the movement, to start putting the brakes on it all and saying, hey, listen, we're pushing out way too many people. We're making this far too exclusive. And the success rate is not high.
yeah,
You can look around at all the people's work that's being done. The success rate is not that high because of the flaws that I outlined before. We've got to be accountable and say, listen, we're dominating the space with technical information that's alienating a lot of people, and our work's not so great.
yeah,
What are we doing here? Maybe what we're doing is, ask ourselves, are we trying to bamboozle everybody with technical information to make ourselves sound important so we get a space and get paid for being an expert, and then people need to rely on us? Are we doing that? Because I think there's a little bit of that in the game, where people sort of want to sort of be gatekeepers of information and then have clients
yeah.
that depend on them
Hmm.
and create a dependency and a service type of thing. I understand a lot of clients want that, and that's cool. But I don't think if we start to sort of imply that people need us all of the time and start milking cash, no, this is a real democratic thing. It is accessible to everybody. And I believe it's been gone on long enough. And I believe it's our duty now to start to change that and push against that culture that's beginning to develop, or that has started to develop. We have to change that culture.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, well, there's definitely room for the technicalities, but also it should be
100%.
much more provided. Well, what comes first should be a sort of like more beginner version of it. And then of course there's definitely a lot to learn from the plant all at once and all that. But
Well, listen, mate, just quickly, Millard, sorry to interrupt you, but what I would say a pathway would be for a beginner or somebody who doesn't really find that technical stuff very helpful. I would suggest start with an infestation. If you don't know what plants to do, ask the community. Get
yeah,
the chat going. Get that word out. Successional information, successional accumulation. Get the word out there, get the term,
yeah.
and understand infestation in context of successional accumulation. Understand that it precedes the stabilization phase. It sets us up for a more complexity. Get a beginner to start. Okay, you start with infestation. Get going with that. Find out within the community chat. Find out what the best plants are for the infestation. Get it planted. Then come back and let's chat about what to do after that.
100%.
Simplest
Sounds
way to
like
start.
sounds like good advice. Yeah, look, so I wanted to ask you a question when it comes to yield. How does yield compare to monoculture in using syntropic ag only, well, inputs in situ?
Yeah, okay. So we're finding it's pretty much the same because our plant density is the same and our yield per plant is basically the same, but it's our cost of carry that's lower because we're managing an ecosystem rather than putting in inputs. So not really much of a yield increase, although I do see potential for that, but definitely lower costs because of less fertilizer needing to be added, less disease, less pest management, and whatnot. You know, like our banana spacing. Look, I may hint that we're getting more, but I'm not going to say it outright just yet because I think it's a bit early.
Yeah.
Happy to match monoculture in yields, more than happy to match monoculture in yields. But what we're doing, for example, a lot of the banana plantings are 2 meters apart in their rows. We're 3 meters apart because we're including a lot of other plants and we're including emergent trees, etc. But we're carrying 2 bananas every 3 meters rather than one banana every 2 meters.
Mm.
So yeah, we might be carrying a smidge more, but let's see. I'm still counting the numbers. We've got good numbers. We've got very, very good numbers. It's definitely profitable way of farming, that's for sure. On our farm, it is. We just need to keep splitting out suckers and planting more rows to get the full scale. But whatever the area that's now producing gives back more than it takes, that's for sure. It's making money. You know, that's the way I roll it. Like in a lot of Syntropic courses, they teach, and I did too, I was part of this. You know, to get two crops from every row, like get your emergent crop and get your medium crop, or get your high crop and get your low crop. And that can work in certain situations, particularly with cacao and coffee and stuff, but mostly I believe that works better in alley cropping anyway. But in your talking specifically about a row, I go for one crop in a row. I don't try and milk it too much. And I let all of the other plants become service ecosystem plants rather than a secondary yielding plant or another yielding plant. I might get passive hardwood later on, but I don't care if I do or I don't because I'm just trying to take one yield from a row rather than two and then give the rest back. And I'm getting better results that way. And I'm happy with that. I don't need any more. I don't want to take too much.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, I see. I mean, as well, the fact is that yeah, getting two crops instead of one. Like, let's say if someone was to farm bananas, they in like a conventional agriculture, they wouldn't be thinking of putting taro in between. Necessarily, it will just be usually just bananas. So in a way, as
Yeah, they might
well,
they might
they might.
intercrop. They might intercropping's fine, but not in the same row.
Yeah, not in the same row. And I mean, yeah, that's what I mean. It's like
Oh yeah, yep, yep.
yeah, because they might think that the bananas would shade too much for any other crop because it's seen a lot in conventional ag that all plants need full sun. Basically, I mean that's something that I see that's definitely here. I don't know how it is in Australia, but there's something to it that could actually it has potential to increase productivity and yield by having different yields, right? But I mean, not saying that it works everywhere. I don't know.
Possibly, but yeah, it's all context based. You know,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
exactly.
not writing off. I think succession is a better way to get diverse yields out of a row.
Yeah,
You know, because my banana rows might turn into jackfruit.
yeah, over time. Yeah,
So
yeah.
the row would yield jackfruit and banana, but separate places in time.
Yeah, and I mean, there's another thing, another component as well that I find interesting is the crops over time. Like, let's say when it's time, like I'm thinking, for example, now we planted like half an hectare of almonds, and let's say
Mm.
at 80 years they stop producing. Like with the soil that we built, we might be able to get away with a crop that will be much more demanding. Let's say I don't know, kaki or apricot or something like that. Let's say. So actually, down the line, through the generations and all that, it is really the retention of the topsoil and the increase of the topsoil makes that instead of like just planting, let's say, olives or almonds, whatever, and then you pull them out and there's no more fertility for them, which happens a lot here, and then this land is just abandoned. Actually, you're able to grow something more valuable actually after that crop has gone, which I think is really
Yeah.
as important.
Yes. Well, that's the function of a forest, isn't it?
Exactly.
Species succession, you know what I mean? It just continually increases in quality and quantity.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that component as well to take into consideration, I guess, the resilience of it. And
Yeah,
the,
100%.
yeah, definitely. Actually, it's interesting to ask this question because you've actually touched on it on the platform on the pathway to regeneration. You said like so basically I want to ask you what impact has had syntropic like syntropic ag has had on like let's say extreme weather events, let's say floods, let's say drought. I know that at Gabala you had like the perfect example of that. That maybe you this is the one that you that comes to mind and you want to share. But yeah,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
just wondering if you yeah, how does it impact big extreme weather events, you know?
Well, I can't say that there's much I can do about a flood.
Yeah.
You know, I have, we had a cyclone last season, this time last year actually. But we had a cyclone on the back of a very wet season. So massive amounts of rain, like every, you know, the cycle that you wet season cycle, you only get kind of every century. And I'll notice some amazing changes in the bush, but that's another conversation. But what we had is that wet, and then we had a cyclone on top of it, which then once it finished its business, it turned into a tropical depression and added even more rain. And we had floods. And it wasn't necessarily just the floods that caused damage, it was just the wet soil. And we lost a lot of pigeon pea. But on saying that, we learned a lot. And we learned how to plant different combinations or different methods or different combinations of an infestation to get around and pass that. And actually now we're way better off with what we've learned from those deaths and the change we made in relation to that. As a whole, we're even better off. So that was a very good thing for us. So I'm grateful for that. But that's another conversation that's more specific about farming. But as far as drought goes, yes, I've had a very interesting experience in the drought. And, you know, if you didn't see it, you wouldn't believe it. You know, record zucchini crop growing in bone dry soil. It's on YouTube. I've got that, I videoed it and it's on YouTube. And yeah, you can see me pick the soil up and it falls through my hands. Yet here we were harvesting. And that's the macroorganism. That's what the macroorganism does. You can plant water, it shares water. It does. And it works. The way it works is I've definitely figured it out. The way it works is the macroorganism will direct its resources towards the most efficiently photosynthesis, the most efficiently photosynthesizing plant at that time. So I was getting strong growth because I was picking zucchinis every day, and the zucchinis were in full growth. The maximum amount, the most highest sugar production rate that was exchanging into the macroorganism was coming through the zucchini. And in return, the macroorganism was giving it water. I'm positive it was giving it water because how else was I harvesting the fruit? I mean, you have a look at my webpage. That background photo on the header is that crop at that time in the drought.
Yeah.
Go figure. But yeah, just get that macroorganism built. The more complex you can build it from simplicity, move into complexity, and use the successional accumulation method to get there. Be patient, get there, and it'll work, mate. It definitely beats droughts. There's some weird things that happened that year. Weird, mate. I was finding soaks under the ground that were wet as if someone left the tap on and it was just dripping for like days and it was just wet mud. This was a serious drought. The 2019 drought the rainforest caught fire, man. That's how bad the drought was, but here it's true. I got photos of it. You would never believe it unless you saw it.
Yeah, it sounds miraculous. I mean, it's this thing of
Yeah,
like, how does that water even like travel? Like, it's just very,
dude.
it's
I
crazy.
know.
It's
Crazy, man. It was like underground pipelines and wormholes. It was
yeah,
weird. And I was picking them up randomly. I'd pull up the mulch and scrape it apart, and there's a round patch of wet soil. It looked like I just had a pee. I mean, that's what it literally looks like. If I show you the photo, it's like, why did you take a photo of you peeing on the ground, man? But that's not what it was. It was that water.
wow. Yeah, this is
Wild,
crazy. Yeah, this
wild.
is wild. Yeah, wow.
Mm.
Yeah,
Trust it. Build the complexity. Start simple, do it simply, just build, plant and manage and trust it, and it'll all happen. We don't need to be technical about it. Let it happen.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, let it
It's,
happen. It's a phenomenon that does it by itself as long as we do the right
that
things.
shows some potential, like for us, like in the Mediterranean, it
100%,
happens a
man.
lot to actually grow tomatoes in what we call secano, which means you just water them for like the first month and then you stop watering them. They never get watered.
Right.
I'm wondering if with that technique, like it could just, I don't know, like actually work very well and not have to water at all and get really maybe bigger crops on that. I don't know how that could work. Like, but definitely it's something to investigate. It sounds really interesting because for the Mediterranean, such like experience, like as you say there, that could be revolutionary. Really, truly, it's like
Oh, yeah, look, that's where it was in that period that I twigged and realized how Mediterranean ecosystems worked because I got a lot. I grew up in an arid climate. I'm Australian. I grew up in the bush in a very arid climate. So most of my understandings and intuitions based on ecosystems are from arid climates. Um, so, but that's when I realize it's like, well, hang on. Most of the summer plants and most of the vegetables we eat are summer growth from a Mediterranean environment.
mhm.
In summer, it doesn't rain. How did these plants evolve and begin? How were they there before we came along and found them? And I know we've hybridized them, but how did they work before we come along and found them? And then it's like you think back and go, okay, the ecosystem was intact back then. When we first domesticated plants and found those wonderful food plants growing in a Mediterranean climate in summer and ate them, things are a lot different. Industrial agriculture didn't exist. So with an intact ecosystem, the macroorganism will supply water to those very vigorous summer growth plants. It's just how it works. So if we rebuild the ecosystem, we will get that back.
Yeah, sounds right. Yeah. Um. Okay. Um. So I'm wondering. This is going into a little bit more of like the philosophy part, but how would practicing syntropic ag, like how did it impact your philosophy on like living life? Has it had any impact at all? Or like what do you find that it changed in your way of seeing the world?
Yeah, we're not separate from nature. That's really what one of the big things. Well, the first primary thing is just to respect all forms of life and value every single form of life. Don't see ourselves as separate. And our ego is a thing that separates us from life. So it's made me a lot more humble. Most of the things that we do as humans that damage our planet and each other are constructs that come from the intellect and the ego, which are a separation from the source of life. So what I've learned to understand is our humility, which is a very important part of our being, was always kept there, and we were always kept in check by limits imposed on us by the ecosystem. We always used to culturally defer to some sort of higher form of life, be it a god or nature or Gaia or something like that. But now it seems, I think, that we've disconnected from that. We don't have a check on us to keep us humble because we have all this diesel and steel and electricity, and we've become like gods. And so therefore we have not been kept in check, and we don't have that humility. And then therefore we've become disconnected from life's source, the source of life itself. We don't understand where our food comes from. We don't understand at all how much danger we are in. We can intellectually understand it. Oh, yeah, yeah, the planet's dying and we're all going to starve. But when you really understand it, like from a thermodynamics and mathematics and an economics perspective as a farmer, it's really existential, and we're sleepwalking into that. So with the hubris, before nemesis comes hubris.
Mm.
And so, yeah, that's what's really opened my eyes up. It's like we've got to reconnect with life's source to move, to become better people, to be kinder to each other, but not only that, to survive. Yeah. So it's made me a lot more humble and a lot more grateful of everything that's around me, and a little bit mistrustful of our veneer of security that we have around us. I certainly made different decisions in my life moving forward in relation to the techno-industrial grid that supports us. I don't trust it. And I have been making moves for the last 10 years towards getting off that, but not running away to go and homestead. I don't believe that's really a good way to go about it. We exist in community. That's tribes and etc. That's how we exist. So setting up, no, I'm not going to go and start a tribe or a community, man. I'm not a cult dude. We'll do what we have to do when we have to do it, man. I don't need to make, I just need to be the guy around the place who knows how to feed people.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, yeah, I see. Yeah, no, it's actually a really good point, this humility, because with the rise of atheism and lack of a spiritual framework, people end up doing things just out of their own volition, not thinking about what the higher source or God has in store for us. And we keep on thinking that we know our own needs and all that, but actually that source knows better. And yeah, definitely, I think yeah, with Syntropic AI, it really reconnects you to that source, makes
Hmm.
you realize that there's that and that there's that intelligence, and it's not in just us humans. It's in the whole natural ecosystem basically. And yeah, yeah, definitely something deep about that. I find
Well,
and yeah,
we've known that for a long time. I mean, if you go back into most ancient spirituality, look at Buddhism, for example, I think that, our mind and our consciousness is separate from ourselves.
yeah,
And, we've drifted off into what we think about things, and that's defined who we are rather than who we are, who thinks things, if that makes sense. We separate ourselves from our thoughts. We've become our thoughts. So therefore we can see ourselves as a unconsciously see ourselves as a as some type of god, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely as well. Like this point that you made about community, that we're meant to live in community. Well, yeah, that is just as well. Yeah, I think the way that that source meant us to be like in to be like, you know. I think that definitely, yeah, that's the thing actually. I think this is the way to get let's say more people involved with farming because what's going on now is that a lot of young people just don't get interested in farming at all. My age, like, yep, they just think it's a boring thing to do, you know, not realizing how important it is and that we need this new generation to uphold farming. Because I mean, I don't remember like the average age of a farmer in Europe. I think it's like 65, probably similar in Australia. But yeah, via community, it's possible to re empower people to understand how vital growing food is, and finding way more people involved with the skill rather than doing like aimless jobs that actually don't have any purpose. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, look, we'll get there. We'll find that out.
Yeah, for sure. It will come out of
Our
necessity
job, I
anyway.
think, is to try to get the work done in front,
Yeah.
so there's something for people to turn to when they need to.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like there's a rush either because it's just going to happen out of necessity anyway. Whatever we do, it's just going to happen. So there's no point in rushing it. It's just going to
No, but if we can make it more accessible, if we can make it
access. Yeah,
easier for people, that's what we want to do.
yeah,
We want to encourage success.
yeah. Hmm. So, yeah. So I'm wondering, like, just a little bit more of like a logistical question. So, like, how many hours a year do you think you work on a farm? I know that maybe you've made a sort of like sheet to know that because I mean you share that on your platform sometimes, and yeah, over what scale, and I'm wondering as well how one can become much more efficient with such practice because a lot of people get discouraged by the amount of work that it seems to be seeing all these plants that need to be pruned and all that, you know.
Yeah, right. So what I've done is I've done it on a per row basis. So I've got on a 20-acre piece of land, I've got 10 acres started, and I've got about 2 acres now covered fully in bananas because I've just been splitting suckers out. I didn't go and spend $15,000 on banana suckers on the first year.
Yeah.
I spent $1,000 on banana suckers and began to split and propagate. So that's the development, the expansion of the farm is based on the exponential growth of banana suckers.
Yeah.
Which, being exponential, it won't be long before the whole farm's full. But that was being very beneficial for me because I had time to learn and get better at it before the bananas were there. Otherwise, I would have gone under. I would have been underwater with complexity because I needed to learn. The last 3 years to 3.5 years have been a learning curve, and I'm very happy with where I am now, and I do feel ready. So what we've got is we've got a one row of bananas, a 150-meter row, a banana consortium. It's very complex planting, a very complex ecosystem, very simple to plant and manage. The complexity is in the ecosystem, not in us. Now, that takes about, we can estimate on the high side, each 140-meter row over 150-meter row over 12 months takes 40 hours to manage,
Mhm.
including all pruning and all harvesting and everything. And that's
Okay.
going on the high side. We're a bit faster than that. So each 150-meter row produces around about on the low side, rounding down on every step, produces about 3 ton or 3,000 kilos of bananas.
Okay.
So, oh, hang on, have I got it right? Yeah.
3 tons per row.
No. Yeah, sorry, no. I've got that wrong. Let me just get back. This is
Mhm.
just okay, trying to get the numbers out of my head. 40 hours to manage a 150-meter row. Each 150-meter row produces $3,000 worth of bananas.
Aye, okay. Yeah, right.
So that $3,000 is the gross um, production for one row. So if you let's just say we pay for 1 week's work for 40 hours, it costs us $1,500 in wages. We've got ourselves a gross profit of $1,500 per row.
Hmm. Okay.
So 10 rows is $15,000, 100 rows is $150,000 if I've got my maths right. That's not including the taro in between.
Will that be how many rows will there be in the end actually on this whole 20 acres? Is it more than 100?
Well, I'm not sure. I haven't done the math on
Yeah,
that. I'd
yeah,
be
yeah,
the land is a funny shape, you know what I mean? They're not
yeah.
all 100-meter
Whatever.
rows, etc.
Okay.
But we just want to get good at that first, have
Yeah,
it pay our wages, have it pay the bills, have it pay for itself. And from that position, we think we've got the first set of goals achieved.
yeah,
And then from that's we'll take another step from there into where we need to go to expand in whichever way is appropriate. But first things first. So we've proven it's profitable on a per row basis. Now it's to manage the grass and the rest of the farm. It's about $500 per acre per year. That's what we're looking at the moment. So add that.
yeah,
Subtract that from the total farm revenue
yeah.
at the year.
Okay.
That's where we're roughly at right now.
Are you satisfied with that, with these numbers?
Yeah, very satisfied with that because we're getting better at it. So we've got room for improvement.
Yeah. To work faster
Once you
and
start getting
more
good at those,
efficient and
sorry, yeah.
yeah,
Well, what happens is you start getting better and better and better and better with management. You get slicker and slicker and slicker. And what happens is not only that, the ecosystem gets more and more and more complex. So the elegance continues to develop.
yeah,
Very exciting. And what I would say for other people, going back to the other part of your question, when it comes down to what do you say to people who say it's too much work and stuff like that? Every person that's said to me that it's too much work and that takes too long doesn't come from a professional agricultural background. So you need to develop your skills. So if you want to, this is real advice that I would give anyone who really wants to be a proper agroforestiero or an agroforester, a proper trade journeyman level professional agroforester. Go to the orchards, monoculture orchards, your apples, your peaches, your citrus, everywhere in places like that, and start doing a pruning season. And get in there and prune. And if you think that you're not going to learn anything because it's monoculture, you're the fool. Because if you actually go through and do a full season and then go and do another season somewhere else on another fruit and learn the differences, you won't only know how to prune fruit trees and the art itself of pruning, you'll also have the skill and speed. And you'll find that you'll come back into pruning agroforestry rows, you'll find it's actually easier to prune an agroforestry row than it is to prune those specialized, highly manicured monoculture fruit tree rows. They're very, very good at pruning. Especially like if you want to go and learn, apples are a good place to learn. And the best place is to go to New Zealand. Those Kiwis know their stuff when it comes to pruning apples. They're very good. I was taught by a lot of Kiwis on the apples, and I learned a lot from them. And if you get the hang of that stuff, you'll go back into the agroforestry and smash it. You'll use the right tools. You'll know how to use the right tools. You don't go walking around with a machete everywhere. You might have to in Brazil because you can't get the tools or something like that. But once you get your hands on a good set of anvil loppers, etc., you start smashing it out. Yeah, you'll be right. So yeah, give yourself a bit of time to learn. Be patient. If you just come out of some other job, some other trade, some other skill set, and you walk in and start pruning rows, doesn't matter how much you know. If you haven't got that skill set, you're a beginner. You got to learn. We need to be humble with that. Farming is a craft. Pruning, all the skills on a field is a craft. It's an art. It takes time to learn them. And we need to learn them if we want to succeed in agroforestry. It's that simple.
Mm.
I've seen photos, right? I've seen videos and photos of Fazenda de Toca in Brazil, where they took on this big commercial thing. Let's do Syntropy in big scale commercially in Brazil and Fazenda de Toca. And then they shut it down. Oh, no, it takes too much work. It's too labor intensive. And you see all the videos of it and all the photos of it. And they're wood chipping eucalyptus with a wood chipper beside the row. And there's 3 dudes standing there wood chipping. That's why it's costing too much. If you're going to go and do that in agroforestry, see you later. You're going to go broke. I mean, I've given you a bit of experience. I've shown you around a bit how to handle those types of plants and trees. And we don't want a wood chipper. Wood chipper wrecks the biomass.
It's so time consuming. I mean, for us, what we do actually, since the Mediterranean, you can get some big branches like in, and it takes a while to decompose. Is we just get the flail mower to come over it. We call it yeah, and it works quite well. It makes a wood chip. I mean,
That's
of
great.
course, the raking onto the road takes time, that's for sure. But yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I mean, we still experimenting with that, but yeah, definitely. I mean, I got a lot of advice from you on the farm, especially ditching the bypass secateurs for the anvil. Like that is like really key, I find. I mean, the anvil loppers. I bought a really good pair of anvil loppers, and they cut through like 50 millimeters. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And
This
I
is
mean,
all professional. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't need to go with like a stack of different tools and then just like, for example, the most time-consuming tool, I guess, would be the handsaw. That takes
Hmm.
quite a while to use. So yeah, just going with the envelopers just makes such a difference. And
Well, I'll tell you a trick, right? A lot of the times when we're dropping wood, when we're dropping heavy wood, um, let's just say if we've got a big branch, right, and it's a heavy piece of wood, we'll go in and let's just say the base of that branch that we have to cut off is like 80 millimeters in diameter. That's a decent branch, right? What we will tend to do is walk in and start cutting it straight off the tree.
yeah,
And when it gets on the ground, we want to start to cut it up. We can do that, and there's a way to do that. But we've got to think about the organization because it's actually the organization of the biomass that takes the time. It's not the pruning once you get the hang of pruning. So have a look at it a different way. Get the loppers before you get the saw out. Because if you look at that branch that you have to cut off that you might need to cut up once it's on the ground, just think about it. It might not be the only way to do it, but think about these techniques. If that branch is sitting on the tree, that tree is actually holding that branch for you. And you can access that branch with 2 hands instead of holding it with 1 hand and trying to cut anything off it. So let that branch hang off. Before you cut the branch off, get the loppers out and start hitting it and bringing it down, all the sticks off it down, and go up in order and come back down. And if it starts, and what ends up happening is you end up with a branch that looks like a deer antler.
mm-hmm.
And then start to hit those antlers off, cut them off with the saw if you have to. And then your final cut can be the branch that comes off the tree and then it drops. And all you got to do is kick them onto the row and keep moving. These are ways to have it. These are techniques that speed pruning up.
Yeah.
Or you can drop it on the ground, depending on the type of branch that it is. You can drop them on the ground. And what we do a lot with the eucalypt and stuff is we we drop the big eucalypt down, all the laterals. We come along with a chainsaw, cut all the laterals off. That's fast. And then we get the remaining trunk, the stem, and we throw it on. It's heavy, it's big, and we throw it onto the row. And wherever it buckles up and not touches the ground, we cut it with a saw. And we only may have to cut it 2 or 3 times, or maybe once, and sometimes rarely you don't have to cut it. And then it's make sure the whole thing's in contact with the ground. Then those limbs that we've cut off the eucalyptus, they've got a handle on them. You just pick them up and there's all the foliage on the end of it.
Mhm.
Throw them onto the row, throw them on. And then it ends up in a big pile of biomass. And then all we need to do then is just walk along, and wherever we see it kinked up and pushed up, we just walk along and cut it, walk along with the loppers and cut it, and it drops. And if we're
Yeah.
satisfied that it's dropped down low enough, that's it, go, keep moving. And it's
Mhm.
fast and it works. People can
Mhm.
say, oh, no, there's not enough soil contact with the ground and stuff like that. We've been doing it for years. It works beautifully.
Yeah. And that makes sense what you're saying there, like to take it off the tree. Like, yeah, I was cutting down quite a lot of firewood there because of the pruning of the olives that we just did. And you realized how much faster it is to just cut off the firewood on the tree rather than
Yeah,
letting the forebranch fall. Because when it falls,
100%.
then you need to be careful that you're not going to hit the ground with a chainsaw, get it blunt,
Yeah,
and all that. So it's much easier to do it straight on the tree. Yeah,
it's just
definitely.
technique,
Yeah, yeah,
the art of pruning.
yeah,
It's an art. That's why they call it an art. That's why they've got old pruning dudes that know so much,
yeah.
that are worth, their knowledge is worth more than, you can think.
Yeah, and I guess
If,
as well with the pruning fast is it's really this case of like stopping to fiddle, just doing the things without thinking. Basically, it just happens, and then you know what to do your cut as soon as you see the
keep
tree.
moving. Yeah. Normally you can see your cut before you get to it.
Yeah, yeah,
As you're walking from your last cut to your next cut, you see your cut and your hand's on the way.
yeah,
You don't have your secateurs out or your saw out or your loppers out looking for a cut.
yeah,
When you know you're an experienced pruner, is when you're making your cut and you've finished your cut, you're looking straight to the next cut.
yeah,
And you're on your way to that cut as you're walking, rather than step back and look around and then look for another cut.
yeah, yeah,
That's how the speed differs. It's just practice.
yeah,
But you'll always be able to see your cuts as you're moving, and then you just move as fast as you can cut.
yeah. Makes sense.
Mm.
Right. So, what's your experience with like pests and disease in a syntropic row? How, what's your experience with that? And do you see clearly that it makes the pressure lower to use syntropic ag?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. It just doesn't really happen. Plants will get uh, pest and disease if they're successionally mismatched,
Yeah.
or if they're genetically weak, or if they're affected by senescence. They don't necessarily have to be senescent themselves, but if the influence of senescence from other senescent trees nearby affect them, they will then suffer pest and disease.
Yeah.
So if you've got a genetically weak plant, cut it out. Nature's just removing it for you. You just help it out by cutting it out. You get a lot of successionally misplaced plants when you do the design heavy consortium planting, because you don't really know how the ground and the earth is going to receive those plants until you plant them. And then when you put them in, like I said earlier on, that nature has to rebalance. And part of her rebalancing is to move out plants that aren't successionally matched. And then you will get suffering plants when you do a plant all at once design heavy type of approach. And the other one with senescence, when you have senescence affecting trees, you'll get things like in citrus, you'll get gall wasp that happens, and you'll get a lot of browsing pressure. You'll find that animals will browse sick plants or successionally mismatched plants, and they'll leave alone the plants that are very well adapted and successionally matched to the conditions. And that's all we've really had. That's the only real experience we have with pest and disease. We don't have a management plan for pest and disease or anything like that because it just doesn't happen
Yeah.
because we eliminate what encourages it.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And also, I mean, I think we have a relation to pest and disease that is just totally different to nature's way of relating to it. Because in nature, if there's I don't know, let's say a certain tree, like let's say an almond that gets affected by a borer, for example, like, I mean, it doesn't really matter. There'll be another plant to take over from there instead. And that, yeah, there's definitely that part to it. And yeah, I mean, but do you think there's a thing as well, like let's say with boring insects or any insects at all, that they get kind of lost in all this complexity that makes them like not able to go from one? That's a theory I heard before, that they get.
I don't buy that one. I think they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I don't think they get lost. I don't think that's us. We're just
Yeah, we
projecting
interpret it like that.
onto them.
Yeah.
That's just projection. No, they know what they're doing. It's just that it's not a viable prospect for them to bore into healthy species that are in vigor. They've got their self-defenses. The tree's got its defenses up. It's got
Yeah.
its chemistry sorted out. It's not deficient. It's healthy. It's in its prime. A borer is going to go to a senescent tree.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what they do. That's how nature gets rid of senescence.
Of
You
course.
see it all the time. If you spend enough time in the bush, you see it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's interesting. Um, right. Well, couple more questions. So, how how do you envision your farm like 10 years down the line? Do you imagine like, I don't know, community, how many people you imagine working there, what kind of crops, what do you envision in 10 years?
Well, I'm actually right now giving the farm away. So um, I'm finding that more and more of my work is getting out in front, developing, building, and once I've got it done and sorted out, give it away, then move on and keep going and developing new stuff. So it can help grow and move it out. So I've got a certain skill set where I've got a group of problems that I know how to solve, that I've this skill set that I've developed over time. And applying my skill set is more about getting farms started, getting people trained, working them out, and getting them successful.
Hmm.
Um, I seem to be have developed a skill set where I'm successful with that. So what I'm doing now is I just want to I'm in partnership with the farm with my father. He's been helping out a lot, his knowledge and I've got a good mate that we pay to work on the farm, Rowan. He's unreal. His ability and skill is he's a high level agroforester. He can shred, mate. He rocks. So he's on top of the work. He can manage that whole joint mostly on his own. Um, So I just said to Dad and Rowan last time I was there, I said, look, I'm working away a lot now. I'm helping to start something else up somewhere else. I just keep getting called to do that. So it's like, all right, well, look, you boys take it over. We know what to do. We've got the farm worked out. We've got it sorted. It's easy now. It's really actually easy to manage and run. So I'll let you guys look after it and you guys pocket the money.
Hmm.
If it expands later on into a bigger farm, which is, it starts to earn sort of better, bigger dollars, I might take a retainer or some sort of fee from that money as, the because I still manage it. I still do the advice. I still visit and draft up the instructions and technical information for it to be executed. I still play that role, but I'm not on the ground anymore working.
Mhm.
I just go there and figure it out and say, boys, this is what we've got to do. Can you see this? Look at that. Look at that. This is what we've got to do. And here's what's happening. So let's do this. I draft it up into a document to confirm that we all understand. Everyone gets the document, the job gets done. It's getting easy. So I can remotely manage farms now as long as I train staff the right way. So my contribution to the movement is to continually get out and help start more and more farms. And I'm going back to Sri Lanka to keep going there. There's really big scope for growth in Sri Lanka and actually all throughout the global south.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I envisage. And what did you ask me where I'll be in 10 years?
Yeah. 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 What do you think?
I don't know.
What's your goal?
But but let's just say in 10 years, in 10 years I'm going to be 62 years old.
Hmm.
I would hope to have a lot more people replace my role by the time 10 years is up.
Yeah.
And hopefully I can take it a bit easier.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Makes sense. Well, I'm sure it's gonna happen. Seems you're
hope
on
so.
the way.
I hope so, mate.
Right.
But
So, yeah, you have anything to add before that last question? No.
no,
If someone wants to just start Syntropic Ag like today, just get started with it, like having listened to this interview and all that, like what are like the general, like I don't know, principles, foundations that they need to have, and what are the kind of pitfalls that they should be aware of to not fall into as they start?
well, I'll start that with a quote from Mark Twain. It's not what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. So taking an approach of objectivity, by having an agnostic approach towards how to do it, being open, and be careful about how much you think you know, because most of the processes we're teaching people is to unlearn people and get away their assumptions and move away from their bad habits and assumptions before they can actually start. It's actually quite simple in the end, and the hardest part is just to get across to somebody how simple it is. I already spoke about that earlier on in our chat, which is if you don't know anything, learn what an infestation is, learn what it does, its role in species succession, which is simple. Then get out and build an infestation. Talk to your community and your peers about what plants are best to use. If you don't know what plants to use, do that. Once you've done that, observe what's going on, see it happening, and just through your interaction and experience with that, you will know a lot more. So then what I will say to you is trust your future self. Don't worry about what you don't know now. Trust what you will know at the time. And then from there, it will all unfold. As long as you as long as you know that an infestation is not a perennial cover crop and it is only the starter and kicks off species succession, you'll be right. Do that and forget about everything else. Because by week 2, you'll know more. By week 4, you'll know more. By 6 months in, you'll know a hell of a lot more. By a year in, you'll know heaps. By 4 years, you'll be an expert. But be present, do what you've got to do now, and trust yourself to learn as you go.
Yeah. And any pitfalls to not fall into?
Yeah, too many bad assumptions, too
Yeah.
many mistakes about thinking you know when you don't.
Yeah.
That's what, I can't plant that tree there. That'll be too big. It's too big. That's a bad thought. It's just not true. It's only going to be too big if you don't prune it.
Yeah.
You I mean, come on. But you hear those sort of bad assumptions all the way, the roadblocks that you build in your own mind for yourself, they're the pitfalls.
Yeah.
trust a community, join a community, join Syntropia, my community, the Pathway to Regeneration. You'll get great help and support there. No one's going to let you go and do something stupid if you remember that community. If you want to chat, it's just why it's cheap. Join your community. I'm sure people in your community will help you. Start asking questions. And one piece of really, really important advice is to anybody starting up is be careful who you listen to. Because there's a lot of people out there that speak from an authoritative viewpoint because they understand the principles of syntropy from a technical perspective, but they've got no experience and they will give very bad advice. Be careful. Quite often, I don't engage in that Facebook community because it's so big and somebody wades in with everyone's an expert, and you just see the advice coming, getting given. And I can't keep up with it. It's a big group. It's like nearly 40,000 members. Be careful. Be careful about who you listen to and look at the body of their work first, or look for a community consensus. If someone says something to you that sounds expert and makes sense to you, but can't be backed up or verified by a community of people that say, yes, we've all done this, be careful of listening to people that sound like they know what they're talking about, because that's an art in itself. Sounding like you're knowing what you're talking about is an art in itself, rather than actually knowing what you're talking about. So be careful about that side. But look, if you fall into those pitfalls and traps, it's fine. You'll find out along the way and learn, man. You'll just learn who to listen to and who not to listen to, and you'll grow from it. It's okay to make those mistakes too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, definitely happened to me too, to listen to the wrong people and then realize that the thing is in that space is as well, some people are just out there to try to make money, and
Yes.
some others use the, as you say, it's a totally different thing to know what you do and what you're doing and having marketing skills in in that. So
Yeah, I mean,
that's like in
trust people.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got to look at what people's experience and body of work is. That's really where you want it, because I mean, I don't try to be an expert. My whole goal is to share the successes that I have and the learning experiences that I get from doing what I do.
Yeah.
So I don't see myself as a teacher or an expert. My role is to simply share what I found that works and what I found that doesn't work through practice.
Yeah.
It's that.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Well, all right. Well, that was actually my last question. So it's been a quite long interview. I think like
Yeah,
more than 2 hours there.
yeah.
But yeah, it's been great to have you, Scott, on this, and you gave some really valuable information here. Like, really appreciate it, and I'm sure it's gonna be great to see. I'm glad to be able to bring forward as well this new method that you set up. You call it what? Successional accumulation.
Successional accumulation.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that is really
Sorry to
something.
interrupt you, but I'm writing a document on it now. It's on Syntropia on the Pathway to
Okay,
Regeneration
I'll put
platform.
up a link to
It's there.
Synthopia to that.
And
Yeah.
I'm currently updating it at the moment. I'm taking some time off to just work on those documents and update that. But hopefully around about 6 months' time, I'll have my book finished. So I've written a very big book, not very big book, big job to write. It might
Yeah.
end up being a small
Yeah.
book. I don't know. I want to make it as small as I can. I don't want to waffle on about crap. I want to just make sure I can share the most important information that's as easy to understand as possible.
Mhm.
And I'll publish that book as a PDF for free that everyone can share around. So it can give somebody a bit more to take home and listen to, look at and read, and it's a bit more helpful for people. So I'm working on that.
Yeah.
So hopefully that information will be a bit more accessible.
Well, that's fantastic because yeah, as I say, like yeah, I haven't found that information in other places than your platform. I don't hear anybody talking about it, and that makes as much sense as you make it make sense. And yeah, definitely. I mean, I think this is the way to get more people interested and practicing syntropic ag.
Yes.
I think
Support
that's the way.
success.
It's
Yeah.
crucial.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, Yeah, so definitely thank you for sharing all your insights there. Very, very valuable. And yeah, well, I'll be dropping a link to Scott's platform down on the yeah, in the description. Right. So that's us there.
Well, thanks very much for it. Well, it was great to chat to you again and keep up the good work, mate. You're doing really excellent work over there in the Mediterranean, and I'm really, enjoying following your projects really closely. Keep it up, mate. Really, really like it.
Yeah, thank you. Much appreciated.